In this video, we'll discuss Chinese aggression in the South China Sea, examine various disputes in the region, learn about exclusive economic zones, and attempt to develop an overview of China's bold ambitions. Let us first try to understand the psychology behind China's aggression. You might have noticed that, along with China's growing global power, its assertiveness in international affairs is also increasing. Whether it is building and militarizing artificial islands in the South China Sea, conducting military exercises near Taiwan, or engaging in the aggressive wolf warrior diplomacy of its diplomats, all of these actions reflect China's growing assertiveness. This East Asian country is rapidly modernizing its military. Today, China's great power competition with the United States is a reality. So to secure its national interests, increase its influence, and challenge US dominance, China is expanding its military capabilities.
This is because China has not forgotten the humiliations it suffered in the past. The Opium Wars, the Boxer Rebellion, and the bitter defeats by Japan in the First and Second Sino-Japanese Wars, such painful memories have taught China one thing: weakness gives rise to many dangers. If a country is economically, militarily, or diplomatically weak, it is bound to be overpowered by stronger countries. It will have to face all kinds of atrocities and exploitation. Survival of the fittest is a harsh reality. In this competitive and unforgiving world, only strength can keep threats at bay, as weakness invites many challenges. Having realized this, China, like other countries, is focused on increasing its economic power, military might, and diplomatic influence. And as we can see, this is also playing out in the South China Sea.
Take a look at this water body south of the Chinese mainland. This is the South China Sea. It is an arm of the Western Pacific Ocean. As you can see, it is connected to the Philippine Sea through the Luzon Strait and to the Indian Ocean through the Malacca Strait. Important shipping lanes that connect East Asia to the Middle East and Europe pass through here. You can get an idea of the strategic importance of the South China Sea from the fact that nearly 1/3 of global shipping passes through it. Therefore, many countries, including China, want to control this critical maritime region. That is why we see territorial claims and counterclaims here. We mentioned the Malacca Strait. Focus on this narrow body of water situated between the Malay Peninsula and the Sumatra Islands. This is the Malacca Strait. This strait is very important for China because around 3/4 of its total oil imports pass through it. This means China is heavily dependent on the Malacca Strait for its energy security. China fears that foreign powers could cut off its energy supply by blocking the Malacca Strait. This Chinese concern is called the Malacca Dilemma. How is China dealing with this? It is diversifying its energy routes while rapidly increasing its naval power to safeguard shipping lanes.
When China's military presence increases in the region, the concerns of the surrounding countries will obviously rise as well. In this map, you can see the countries bordering the South China Sea: China, Taiwan, the Philippines, Brunei, Malaysia, Indonesia, Singapore, and Vietnam. If we also consider the Gulf of Thailand, then Cambodia and Thailand are included as well. These countries are quite concerned about China's assertive actions in the region. In fact, out of these 10 countries, China has disputes with all of them in the South China Sea, except for Singapore, Thailand, and Cambodia. And disputes are inevitable because China claims it has historical rights over the South China Sea, asserting that it has controlled this region since ancient times. For this reason, it still tries to assert its dominance over the area. This, of course, leads to tensions and disputes as the international community does not recognize China's claims. Other countries in the region totally reject China's unilateral claims. However, since these countries are no match for China in terms of military and economic power, China bullies them and claims almost the entire South China Sea. China insists that any country operating in the region must obtain its consent before conducting military or economic activities because, according to China, this area falls within its exclusive economic zone.
The area up to 200 nautical miles from the coastal boundary of any country is called the Exclusive Economic Zone or EEZ of that country. 1 nautical mile is equivalent to 1.852 kilometer. So 200 nautical miles equals 370.4 kilometers. This means the area extending up to 370 kilometers from the coastal boundary of any country constitutes its exclusive economic zone. According to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, a country has rights over the natural resources in this zone, such as oil, gas, fish, and minerals. Within its EEZ, the country can conduct mining and exploration and regulate activities. Now, China builds artificial islands in the South China Sea and then militarizes them. It then declares the area up to 370 km from these islands as its exclusive economic zone. This obviously overlaps with the exclusive economic zones of other countries, leading to disputes in the region. As a result, the South China Sea has become one of the most disputed theaters in the Indo-Pacific region. You may have heard of China's infamous 9-dash line. It encircles the Chinese claimed territories in the South China Sea. China has not disclosed the exact coordinates of this line. It is simply a randomly drawn line on the map that China uses to cite historical maritime rights and claim nearly 90% of the South China Sea. Because of this, we frequently witness diplomatic and military tensions in the region. The 9-dash line is just a few hundred kilometers away from countries like the Philippines, Malaysia, and Vietnam, while as you can see, it is quite far from mainland China. So this overlap with the exclusive economic zones of other countries inevitably leads to disputes.
When disputes arise, don't these countries try to resolve them? Yes, they do, but it doesn't yield any results. Even when countries file cases against China in the Permanent Court of Arbitration, as the Philippines did in 2013, it doesn't matter to China. China continues to assert its claims in the region. In 2016, the Permanent Court of Arbitration in The Hague, Netherlands, ruled in favor of the Philippines and declared China's claims illegal. So, what did China do? It simply rejected the ruling. Although the court gave a binding judgment, there is no mechanism to enforce it, so nothing happened. China didn't comply. Despite being a signatory to the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, China does not follow its rules. It violates the exclusive economic zones of other countries defined under this convention and regularly conducts naval patrols, which is why we frequently see confrontations between Chinese vessels and those of other countries, as recently happened with the Philippines. Talking specifically about disputes, I have pinpointed some areas on the map. Look here, the Spratly Islands, Paracel Islands, Macclesfield Bank, Scarborough Shoal, James Shoal, and Pratas Island. These are key areas claimed by multiple countries and are at the center of disputes. They represent potential flashpoints for conflict in the South China Sea.
The availability of oil, natural gas, and rich fishing grounds in the region also increases volatility. This is because countries want to control these critical resources for strategic gains. The strategic importance of the region for China has increased even more since the discovery of the Lingshui gas field in the South China Sea. Lingshui is China's first large deepwater gas field. According to estimates, there are over 100 billion cubic meters of gas in this ultra-shallow field. That is huge. Do you get what this means? By extracting this gas, China can reduce its dependence on foreign energy resources. Therefore, to secure strategic maritime resources, China's expeditions and military presence are bound to increase here. And when it comes to resources, of course, we'll definitely see US intervention. Supporting China's opponents to counter Chinese military activity, providing them with weapons, and securing more military bases to increase its own presence, the US will do all this. Not will do. The US is already doing it. Ultimately, arms buildup and military activity will rise in the region, increasing tensions and the risk of conflict. China asserts control over resources in the region, threatens other countries, harasses their fishermen, and pressures them against building alliances with the US. The US pushes back against China's expansive claims, tries to ensure fishing rights and freedom of navigation for other countries, and speaks about upholding international law. You might have probably heard that the US has sent warships to sail around the disputed islands of the South China Sea, those islands on which China tries to impose restrictions. The US calls this a freedom of navigation operation. By conducting such operations, the US regularly sends a strong message to China that international waters are free for navigation and overflight, and they do not belong to China.
Apart from this, to counter the growing influence of China, the US is strengthening diplomatic ties with Southeast Asian countries like the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and Indonesia. The US regularly conducts joint exercises with allies such as Taiwan, the Philippines, Australia, and Japan. To promote a rules-based order in the South China Sea, the US also engages with multilateral forums like ASEAN and the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. Then, of course, we have the Quad, which aims to promote a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific region. And the South China Sea is included in that. Further, how can we forget Taiwan? Taiwan is a strategic asset for the US. The US not only provides diplomatic and political support to Taiwan, but also supplies it with military equipment and technology. Taiwan is the world's leading semiconductor manufacturer, and because of its strategic location, it is a crucial tool for the US. A whole separate video could be made on how the US counters China by leveraging Taiwan. We will discuss it some other time. Today, we talked about the psychology behind China's aggression and examined the maritime disputes in the South China Sea, which is considered a hotbed of geopolitical tension. Let's end our session here. I hope you found it useful. See you soon in the next video, and thank you for watching Shom.